Another news today, Corruption Watch says the exclusion of rural communities from consultation and mining rights agreement processes is a major factor in the rise of corruption and mismanagement of mining royalties in the country. Several communities in South Africa have complained over the years about being left out of such agreements, while others have allegedly been bullied or killed for opposing deals with major mining companies. Corruption Watch released a report this week titled Improving Transparency and Accountability in the Flow of Benefits to Mining Communities, along with legal review, distribution of mining equity of community to community trust. To discuss this, we're joined by Mashudu Masutha, legal researcher at Corruption Watch. Mashudu, thank you so much, and thank you very much for your patience, especially as we're getting through that breaking news. Who is stealing from these communities?
Hi, Thembi. Thank you for having me. Really, it's really key stakeholders that are not allowing communities either to have a seat at the table insofar as the compensation arrangements that are done in their name. So it could be where communities are in traditional or are residing in traditional authorities with traditional leaders. It could be mining companies, consultants. And I think the most concerning was the presence of provincial government officials, where they have been facilitating and aiding in corrupt activities. And this was mostly found in the 2018 report that we released, where public officials, particularly the Northwest provincial government officials, were involved in the siphoning and looting of community funds.
And I'm curious about when communities usually realize that they have been robbed, taken for a ride, because often you hear about these stories after this has all happened.
Absolutely, and typically that really is the fundamental problem is transparency. So communities are unaware of what arrangements have been made on their behalf. And as a result, the agency in advocating for their rights is very limited. For example, the Baba Mokhale Public Protector report that concluded that over 600 million was siphoned out of the Baba Mokhale community's development accounts. But it's not helpful to know about it after the fact. And there's not a lot of accountability measures that are then put in place to ensure that there's the recouping of that money. So the aim of this report that we've released is to try as much as possible for all stakeholders to put in policies that is transparent and that puts in accountability measures to prevent and to really be proactive in ensuring that the compensation arrangements that are done on behalf of communities are done in such a way that communities are aware of what's happening across the entire value chain of mining.
I'm curious, Mashudu, about how much recourse communities would have without the activists in the space and NGOs. I'm thinking of stories like Tolobeni and how shocking as that was, chances are very likely that much of it was going on, but that story, for example, got a lot of attention because people began to die and there was the media spotlight on it.
Absolutely. I think, when you look at the civil society space, particularly in the mining sector, there's a very strong, civil society is very strong with your mining civil society. So, that is very beneficial for the communities of South Africa. But I think within communities themselves, there is a great deal of activism within the communities. I think communities are very well aware of their rights insofar as, at least insofar as compensation arrangements are concerned, because the public education material that is out there facilitates that kind of engagement. Uh-huh. So there is strong presence of civil society, and without it, I don't think it will go far. But I do think within communities themselves, there is a lot of knowledge about what their rights are and how to advocate for themselves.
The challenge there then becomes the fact that communities themselves aren't always united on what should happen as far as mining rights or whether the mining should begin in the first place. Are there effective strategies and tools at this stage to resolve that without it ultimately ending up in an escalation, if you will, in the violence that we've seen, disagreements that have to go all the way to the court? Is that ultimately where it all has to go?
That's really the difficulty, because you have a situation where policy currently, because of the newly enacted Traditional Khoisan and Leadership Act, legitimizes and puts authority to traditional councils within traditional authorities. And it allows traditional authorities to make decisions on behalf of communities. So what that does is it takes away the ability for those that are most affected by mining development to have a say in issues that will affect them. So that will create a massive tension within communities themselves, and it really does create a very big problem. But without any kind of mediation in those situations, whether it is by civil society or whether it is ultimately through a court process, those are really the only ways in which these things can be resolved. But it is unfortunate that our policymakers seem to be going in an opposite direction of what's happening on the ground and enabling communities that are most affected by mining development to have a say in issues that affect them.
And organizations like yourself, of course, you do all this research, you put together these reports. Ultimately, though, how do we take these findings and make them living documents that are used for the benefit of the communities most affected?
Absolutely, and that's really a good point, Thembi, because with this report, what we focused on making sure that it is reflective. It can be a reflective document for industry, for government, and for community. So it's user friendly for all the major stakeholders insofar as ensuring that there is economic mobility within mine-affected communities. Unfortunately, when we developed this report, we engaged with industry as well as with government, as well as with civil society, to ensure that not only do we get the right data and insights, but also to ensure that we can table this and discuss and create dialogue around these issues more closely. Because I think the important thing is when you do talk about best practice, it doesn't work or purely from a legal perspective. You do need context, and that's when you develop the best practice.
Mashudu Masutha, legal researcher with Corruption Watch. Good to speak to you this Sunday, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.